All right, should we jump in? Our January 2025 Worksties T job report is in. It's been in for a while. We're just now recording this episode and we'll be caught up for February Worksties T job report. And just overall from the job market, let's just say it's giving cautious corporate energy. I think is a fair assessment, Danielle. We're seeing overall job growth slowing. Inflation is still high. Mass layoffs are happening in different places. They're making headlines everywhere. I feel like you can't get away from them. But at the same time, we have wages that are up, but we're still being compressed when you think about that cost of living. And healthcare and retail are hiring like crazy. So people are still buying things, apparently. And obviously, healthcare, you have to take care of people. So that's still growing. And then Apple, we'll talk about this too. They just dropped casually. They'll be spending $500 billion projected in the market over the next 4 years, and I think 20,000 jobs. So that's a little bit of a bright spot as we look at it all. What are your thoughts?
I agree. Jobs added 143,000. That was lower than expected. But I think maybe that's good because sometimes when it's a little high, they end up having to do a retraction and, kind of adjust the number. We're still seeing some of the same sectors that we've been seeing contracting too, with tech, energy, and manufacturing showing layoffs. I have a feeling some of that's going to change as we get farther into the new administration and the tariffs take place. There's been a lot of back and forth with some of those, and they were delayed, and then, they could very well just never happen or only happen with, China or something. But that's definitely going to have an impact on our goods coming into the United States, the cost, and if we'll need to source those elsewhere or bring those manufacturing jobs back to the United States.
Yeah.
Which would be great. Take some time to get that, that course corrected. And we get a lot of construction goods from Canada. So that could present a problem when we get more into the spring and summer and how it affects housing and construction jobs and things like that. So definitely cautious and interesting to see how this will kind of evolve over the course of the year.
Yeah, I agree. It's hard to tell if the job market is struggling, evolving, or just plain confused when you think about overall with what's happening. I think some of the balancing act, like what's happening in the market, because you have some shrinkage in tech when you think about the 5% workforce, and we'll go into the actual numbers that Meta's laid off. I think Workday, I think that estimate was also around 5%. So you're looking at like across companies when they have this mass layoff, what they're saying is it's about 5% to gain optimization efficiencies is what they're citing. I mean, there was another reason cited by Meta. I will I'm not going there on that one, but maybe you're your org.
Meta.
I know, like, come on, you're just readjusting your business. What is performance related?
Well, and there was so much hiring after COVID and so much expansion, everybody went a little crazy. That's probably to be expected, but I wish companies had been a little bit more thoughtful about it beforehand. So,
yeah, I completely agree with that. So by the numbers, you talked about this already. I'll just read a couple of these. The economy added 143,000 just last month, below expectations. It wasn't the lowest. When I actually looked at the adjusted numbers, we talked a little bit about this in 2024. In the last 5 years, with the exception of January, 2024 showed the lowest numbers with adjustments. There was a month, it was October, I believe, that was adjusted down to 12,000, which is significant when you think about the numbers that have been produced. So it's really interesting to continue. Because we know it's been a struggling market for a long time, but it just wasn't being pushed out there and it wasn't being talked about. So it feels like, I think to a lot of people that it's very recent, but this has been going on, I would say, I don't know, at least a couple of years in my mind. When I think about everything that's been happening with companies, the downturn in professional level jobs, all of those pieces, it just, if you're not out there looking and you're going to work every day, I don't think you noticed it. I don't think you really noticed it.
You'd notice more of the inflation and how the cost of living, just living, gas, food, housing, your energy bill, all of that is impacting your life. So I think that's true. And I think that the market is so struggling too, because there's just so many more people looking for work right now. And and I have to wonder too if there are families where, maybe if they'd had a layoff a couple of years ago, maybe one of the in the couple would have just stayed home and taken care of the kids. But because the cost of living is so high now, they're having to both go to work, regardless of whether or not they would have done the same thing a couple of years ago.
Yeah, which causes a whole nother set of issues because daycare is so expensive, especially if your kids aren't in school yet. I think when you have school age kids, it's a little bit easier, with the costs and
Right.
things like that. I know and this is back in the day, that daycare cost was crazy, and I'm sure it's just even now.
Right. Yeah.
All right, so a little bit more by the numbers. I'll run through these, and then we'll do some commentary on them. Unemployment dropped 4%, which sounds good. When you dig deeper, you realize companies are optimizing and not expanding. Wages are up 4.1% year over year, which is great for workers, but it also means companies are feeling the squeeze on payroll. Tech, energy, and manufacturing, which you mentioned a little bit earlier, saw layoffs, while healthcare, retail, and social services kept hiring. And the labor force participation is stuck at 62.6%. So people are working, but we're not seeing a big improvement in job reentry. So let's go into who's cutting the jobs and why next. So BP had 4,700 jobs gone. It said they're trimming $2 million in costs by 2026, and they're citing it's shifting focus back to oil and gas and quietly pulling back on renewable energy. Meta saw 3,600 layoffs. Mark Zuckerberg's Europe, I should say, is what it's called. I just wanted your reaction, Danielle. That's it. I just wanted the face. That's all I want.
I will refrain from comment.
I know, it's so hard. It means cutting 5% of the workforce, and then they're doubling down on AI. So they're shifting to let's focus more on the AI piece of it. It's really cutting the low performing workers. Anyways.
Really, I don't did that. They said that because it's not, it's not true. And it just makes people feel bad. Like, we really got to kick them in the butt on the way out. I mean, come on.
Yeah, it's a horrible narrative. It's such a bad narrative.
Yeah.
Bridgestone America has 700 jobs lost in Tennessee after a plant closure to streamline operations. The read on that is cost cutting, federal workforce cuts. So Doge, I know you're a fan of Doge, just kidding, Danielle, just flat thousands of jobs in federal agencies. AI is replacing roles, and there's a massive restructuring happening. So I think this is, we're hearing a lot of
that to be determined because now there's courts pushing back saying they can't let those people go. So there's going to be a lot of back and forth on this, I think, over the next couple of months, probably.
Really interesting. This one, I think, is one of the most interesting ones to watch because do we need efficiencies in our government? Absolutely. Like, we've seen it working with government entities and our archaic systems that they have, and there's multiple people doing some jobs.
Yeah,
you can't just write the slate clean. You have to evolve that business. So, I don't know. I'm interested to see how this.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is that when you do it the way that they're doing it, it's just it's going to cause so much chaos within the government and hurt more people in the long run. And I don't think that the American people want to save money that way. When they see people just losing their jobs like right out of the gate. And I mean, it's a little bit more like how the private sector does things.
Yeah.
Yeah. But at the same time, those people have things that impact American citizens, benefits and things like that, ultimately could become casualties of that. So
yeah,
more complicated issue.
I agree completely. And what's interesting to me is this how a lot of companies do their layoffs or their reorgs or the restructuring organizations. And now that it is something that is very open. When you look at it has to be open because it's our government. You're seeing all of the things that actually happen in corporate that no one ever really talks about.
Yeah. But I mean, I was watching some like a compilation of videos from TikTok of federal workers who'd been laid off and some who had been there 15 years, some who'd been like military and then went into government to work, and people who'd only been hired recently, like all over the place, who just unilaterally lost their jobs. And it was interesting because watching that, I'm like, I've been through this. I've
Mm-hmm.
been through major reorg restructurings where you were given, a phone call, not necessarily an email, but it was a quick phone call and then you're done within like an hour or 2 hours. Lucky if you get a couple weeks notice, but you know, so that's a problem though with the government. You can't just do it the same way. But yeah,
Yeah. You got
I
to that
commiserated with.
reskilling
Yeah, I've
and
been
really,
there.
yeah, but it is. It's when I think about, if I think from a mindset, a business mindset. So the personal aspect, I'm going to remove that. But when I think about it from a business mindset and you're looking, you're saying, okay, here's the things that can be made more efficient, or we have, duplication of roles or jobs or things like that. You immediately, especially something that's not really been, I don't know how it's been managed. So let's just say that, right? And then you think about the agents that were added, just IRS agents in the last year. There's 10,000 jobs added. If you look at that, were those 10,000 really necessary? If you look at the job growth in 2024 with 41,000 government sector jobs added per month. So just really interested to really understand what roles we're talking about. What does the impact look like? How do we find these efficiencies? Because our systems, just like I compare it to a really old business that exists that doesn't update their systems. We've been part of these before. I won't name any names, but if you think about that, just even based on systems, you have an overstaff amount there. And then once you
Right.
unplug that and plug in something, you automatically find some efficiency. So I don't know, something to watch.
Yeah,
We'll
no, and I
count all
and I
hands
get
out.
it because I think that there's definitely opportunity for efficiency for sure. There is no matter where you go, but you're right. Like to just unilaterally decide that you really have to be a lot more strategic about it to say this is how much we need to save and then kind of filter that out throughout the government and start looking at your head count, looking at the systems you're using. Where do you think we can make some efficiencies? It's not quick, but it's definitely going to be better in the long run because you're giving a little bit more autonomy back to the people. And because there's maybe a lot that they would be able to bring forward right away that could be cut within 30 days or something.
Yeah. Yeah. So we'll keep watching that. We'll keep reporting on it as we see what happens and how shifts evolve. But there was, so when I
Every
look at,
day.
yeah, every day we hear something. But when I looked at January, there were jobs added in the government sector. It wasn't, like completely, because there was the freeze put on and things like that. So again, just something to watch.
It'll be interesting to see what the February numbers look like and how they, compare.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree completely. And then if we see any retractions or redactions, like we do see, in prior, so that'll be interesting to see too. Or are we getting a pure out? I don't know. You would think if there's efficiency, we would find efficiency and not have to retract the count that we have that we're adding. So we'll see about that. All right.
For sure.
So some of the big money moves that we have, Apple, we talked a little bit about that. That's coming back into the market overall and creating those jobs. I think it's in Houston. So we have silicon engineers, AI engineers are coming into the mix there. You have in the hardware that's being built in that big manufacturing facility as well that is coming into play. I think just overall, when I think about the job market and the numbers that we're seeing and some of the in that how hard it is to get a job today, we're hearing this, right? We have more automation than we ever have had, but yet the right candidates are not finding the right jobs at the right time. And then we have this, I feel like it's almost this friction point with companies finding optimization. They're cutting what they feel are not essential roles just overall. And we're seeing this shift. And I don't think that companies know exactly as they're installing some of this tech, how their shifts are actually going to look to be able to plan and prepare for it. So I think when we see these all of a sudden, mass layoffs and then they're exciting AI is a big site for them. I don't know how,
Right.
like I said, we talked a little bit about this before. I don't know how accurate, right? That is
Yeah.
because you need to bring in people to build to the systems and do work a little bit differently.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the companies that are selling some of the AI, not all, but some of the AI are probably don't have enough like historical data to really substantiate the claims that they're making. It's more like, we think it's going to do this, or from our testing or whatever. So it'll be interesting, companies that do invest in outside agencies to bring in some AI changes, how it will impact them over the long run, and if it will actually produce the results they think it will.
Yeah, I think when we think about navigating the job market, I feel like we owe it to the people out there looking, or someone who's out there or maybe thinking about moving jobs. I think navigating it, skilling is imperative.
Yeah.
What jobs are relevant? So we're seeing a huge shift like we've never seen with tech coming in, with the optimization pieces of it. We're seeing that there are new skills that are being created that are in demand that necessarily people don't have. And I don't think, if we're going to more of a people on the other side, have this high touch model, right? They're working and partnering with AI. It's a whole other skill set that comes in, because there's people who are afraid to embrace it. There's people who are automatically embracing it. So I think how we're also thinking about how we train people and get them into some of these jobs is really important. And then how do you upskill yourself?
Agree.
It's everything right now.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of places where it can be helpful, but companies are afraid of it. Employers are afraid of it. Recruiters are afraid of it,
Yeah. All right. And then just economic in policies. I'll just run through these numbers really quick. So things to think about as the job market continues to shift, the tariff implications. I think it's going to either create jobs. It could take some away based on it. Is retail still getting merchandise they need and things like that? So that one's hard to call in my mind, how this one's going to actually start to pan out. And then companies adjusting their strategies. When you look at finding optimization, I mean, I've seen a company that has gone through, they're on their number three. I don't want to say it, but they're on their third reorg in 3 years. That is crazy when you think about it. I mean, so whoever's remaining has just been kind of tossed around within that organization. So I'd say overall, go ahead.
I was just going to say, the people who remain end up feeling really beat up. And they have like a weird, like, am I next? Why did I make the cut? Blah, blah, blah. But then people who join after one of those cuts are like, why is everybody so weird? Like, why, why is the vibe here so off? Like, it definitely impacts your company culture.
Yeah, it really does. It really does. Sector performance, I'll read through those and then I'll kind of do just an overall my take and then do your take after this. Is healthcare was 43,700 jobs that were added. Retail trade, 34,300 jobs. Social assistance, 22,300 jobs. And then mining, oil and gas extraction is down 8,000 jobs. But then when I look at the layoff that happened with BP, they're supposed to be focusing on oil and gas and getting away from that renewable energy. So we'll see if that sector starts to bounce back at all.
Which is very odd. That is just really odd.
Well, there's
going
on that in the whole discussion.
Well, I know maybe not necessarily in the U.S., but it is a British-based company, so I don't know. I guess it's just here in the United States, but I was thinking more globally, I guess.
Yeah. See what that impact is. But so overall, the market's sending mixed signals. When you look at it, upskilling is really important. Networking to look and find a job is important. If people will answer you back, I think also on that side of things, we talked about this as well, connecting with people and saying, hey, what you got? It's become a little bit harder from we're trying to see what's out there type thing, or someone's trying to see what's out there. So I think it's definitely a continue to watch. We'll see how everything shapes out with how the government, DOGE is handling things. And then what are the shifts as these new policies come into play that happen within the marketplace? So when I think about, the tariff piece, Apple's in front of it, they're bringing jobs back, trying to shift to get ahead of it. Will we see other companies doing that? Or is it just going to be kind of a sit and wait thing from some organizations?
Yeah, I mean, I think companies are gonna, if they have the revenue to do it, and they have the ability to do it, they need to, And I think the government's probably going to have to help fund some of the projects to say, yeah, we're creating these tariffs, and if you are willing to, set up your business here, build a facility, or take over some existing factory that has been shut down and repurpose it, then the government would help to subsidize some of that or give you some kickbacks or something to make that happen. I think that's that would be a really good thing, especially for a company that's not an Apple, that it isn't that huge to be able to do something like
Yeah. Because I mean, there's still like when we think about the labor market that we're in, we just talk about what we know from an onshore, nearshore, offshore perspective, depending on where you have labor, right? You still have a cheaper labor source that you can get to. When we think about automations, that's still a global labor force. So we also, if I think about manufacturing, right, that's very in location if we're shifting to this from a tariff perspective. If it is automation, we still have the global workforce that comes into play. Where are you going to have those resources? What makes the most sense? Who's actually skilled to do those jobs as well will come into play.
right.
The economic conditions of a country will come into play. So I think we'll still see some very interesting shifts as we continue to go through this year, this labor market. We'll see what February's report generates and how that changes and kind of track it back to say, okay, this is what we're seeing as a trend versus this is a blip based on what's coming in and how things are being handled. So it's an interesting watch.
I agree.
All right. Anything else to add? Or should we stop there?
No, I think that's good.
All
We
right.
can stop there.
This episode was sponsored by socialjobs.com. Don't forget to like, follow, share, comment. Anything else?
Nope, that was it. Available on all your streaming and viewing platforms. So share with a friend.
All right. Until next time.